So, preface this. This is going to be a theology video, and it is going to be a theology video in particular talking about LGBTQ people. I want to talk about, in my professional opinion as an ordained minister with a certification Art of Biblical Words, about Romans 1:27, and how it is very clearly evident that Romans 1:27 is a very isolated snippet where if you read the rest of the entire passage, it very clearly is not a condemnation of same-sex. It is clearly a condemnation of idol worship and pagan sex magic. When they're talking about it, if you start even a little bit backwards and go a little bit forwards, and you read it as a collective from 123 through 120 through 131, it is very clear that the things he says that they gave into, that they gave into all things evil, homosexuality is not even listed on there. It says that they were jealous, they were rebellious, they were revelers, they were violent, they did all sorts of other unsavory, and the act doing these said unsavory things, no sexual act is listed in the list of the unsavory things that they gave into. What it is said literally expressly that God allows them to do and to give into is because he allows them to, because they are worshiping idols made of in the image of man, or four-legged animals, or oxen, right? And it clearly describes a pagan temple, a place of pagan worship, and that allowed whatever metaphysical energies to spill in that caused them to perform sex rituals that then unleashed violence in their towns, or whatever it was that Paul was seeing. And I also want to bring up the fact that though Leviticus 18:22, I still say they don't clearly define exactly what a man laying with a man as with a woman is. They don't clearly define that. You could take a very, very like primitive understanding of it and just go, it means gay, it means sex. But to be 1000% clear here, they never reuse that exact same term outside of the other contexts I'm talking about here. And also in an Old Testament context. In both 10 Commandments. So Exodus 20 is usually where people pull from the original 10 Commandments. There's also a passage in Exodus 34 that some people try to say is the 10 Commandments, but both sets of them, again, the things that they list as what not to do is do not commit adultery, do not be jealous, do not covet things, don't kill people, don't worship other idols, right? It's very clear that even in the Old Testament, God is more concerned with people not worshiping idols, not harming each other, not being jealous of each other, and observing the Sabbath. He's way more clearly obsessed with that for us than anything about sex. The only thing that is mentioned in sex is to not covet thy neighbor's wife, and do not violate any widows or orphans. Right? Like, there's nothing about gay sex in whatever you think the 10 Commandments are, right? In Exodus. And in Romans 1:27, where they said they gave into unnatural desire, yeah, they were doing pagan worship. They started, then God allowed whatever metaphysical thing was taking hold of them to take hold of them, and then they did things that are not even clearly defined as specifically regular gay sex. It says that they did shameless acts with one another, and they gave way to their into unnatural desires. Last I checked, gay people are naturally gay, right? Like, I was naturally born transgender, but also, even though I am a trans woman, I'm still have always been, and most likely always will be, and currently still am, naturally only attracted to other women. So, last I checked, gay people were naturally gay. So whatever type of sex act that they were doing in Romans, it's very, very explicitly clear on a scriptural basis was an unnatural act, and it was something that was brought on by pagan worship that the pagan gods probably released out there, and God let that happen, let whatever curse they were doing or whatever weird ritual was taking hold, or whatever magic was taking hold, God let it happen because they were doing idol worship and they were worshiping pagan gods instead of him. And even when he says they gave into all kinds of evil because they worshiped the creature over the creator, it says because they worshiped the creature over the creator. It doesn't say because they were gay, right? But then when it says they gave into all kinds of evil things, homosexuality, same-sex sex is not listed on the all kinds of evil things they gave into. Jealousy is, revelry is, being rebellious to your parents is, stuff like that. Not gay sex. So just theological, like if you want more of my basis for why I always say Romans 1:27 isn't actually about regular gay sex, it's specific to pagan sex magic, and if you want a more grounded argument, the main argument is from beginning to end, we don't actually know exactly what act Leviticus 18:22 is referring to. We know it is most likely some type of male-specific same-sex act, but we don't know exactly what that act is due to the isolation of its usage. And the 10 Commandments do not condemn same-sex sex. And the Romans 1:27 passage, if you just read 127 through 123 through 31, which is a longer reading of the same passage, it becomes very, very blatantly clear that they are talking about pagan sex acts as acts of worship of pagan gods instead of the biblical God, which led to some sort of metaphysical reaction, which caused them to have some sort of orgy magic ritual, which then released all sorts of evil cravings into them, right? All sorts of evil desires. Amongst those same evil desires, not same-sex sex. I was arguing with this lady about this, and she was immediately like, you're just trying to make the scripture fit your interpretation, Romans 1:27. She kept repeating the same passage, and so I hit her back with the exact same thing of a longer reading of the same. Right, I want you to see that I'm actually reading from the actual book of Romans. And right here, if you start at 23, you can read the prior too. Prior, they're talking about the wrath of God is revealed from heaven for all sorts of ungodliness and yada yada. Nothing about gay sex here. But then it clearly says, if you start at 23, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling a mortal human or birds or four-footed animals or reptiles. Clearly a pagan temple, and the violation is that they are worshiping the pagan gods. Therefore God gave them over in their desires of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Clearly what's being condemned here is the fact that they are worshiping idols. And for this reason, God gave them over to dishonorable passions. Their females exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural. Want to be clear here, they only specify that the males start having same sex with the other males. It just says that the females gave into unnatural desires. It never specifies exactly what they were. For their females exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural, and in the same way, also the males, giving up natural intercourse with females, were consumed with their passionate desires for one another. Males committed shameless acts with males and received in their own persons the due penalty for their error. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them over to an unfit mind and to do things that should not be done. They were filled with every kind of injustice, evil, covetousness, malice, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, craftiness. They are gossips, slanderers, God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, rebellious toward parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Nothing about sex in the all sorts of evil that they gave into. Now it says that they gave into their dishonorable passions. This is clearly some sort of like, clearly it is with the males, it is clearly a gay group sex act, but it is clearly being done in the context of being in a pagan temple worshiping other gods. And the punishment that God gives them is that he lets them do the ritual. And that ritual unleashes them to give in to being completely self-centered, to slandering each other, to... Basically, they all become sociopaths and narcissists. So yeah, if ever someone brings up Romans, just to give you a little bit of a very basic framework to combat that with, Romans is not about being gay. It's about idol worship. God bless. Walk in love.